Hi everybody, JT Hume here from the worldwide headquarters of the CC and JT Amateur Hour, the world famous podcast that helps writers write. The other name for it is where production values go to die, which is sort of like what we're doing here. But what we're doing here is I'm reading a book for y'all, Duties Faithfully Executed. And as I'm reading ahead on this book, I'm learning some things about me as a writer that I would and would not do. And I'm going to talk about that at the end of this part. Now, again, Duties Faithfully Executed, published in 2013. I haven't read this in years, and I'm kind of cringing here a little bit when I do read ahead. And I'm going to just power on through that as much as I can. So if you be patient, bear with me. We'll do this together. Duties Faithfully Executed is on Kindle. It's on Amazon. Look for JT Hume and you'll see a whole bunch of books there. I wonder if I can do that. I don't know. Probably not. I don't want to waste too much of your time. But, it's like scroll. See, there's a whole bunch of books out there, including a book right there. You see that one? Get a little closer. That one's going to be available in January. Go to my website or go to our website at www.carsonhume.com and pre-order this puppy, 99 cents. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to reading. So, diving into the book of Bruce, I'm probably not going to explain too much because if you've watched the other videos, you probably have a fair idea what's going on. Bruce, this is a story of a politician, and I need to go ahead and get reading through it. And what I'm going to read right now is an interlude labeled Communications Director. So let me go ahead and read on this. Interlude, Communications Director. Let us begin. Much of America's perception of politics comes from Hollywood. And it's no coincidence that Washington's been called the Hollywood for ugly people. The funny thing is that movies and TV shows get a lot right, which goes to show that politics is low-hanging fruit for directors, producers, and, most importantly, writers. Everything you see through a campaign cycle leading up to that first Tuesday in November is carefully scripted. Speeches are rehashed from previous successful campaigns. The same interview questions and answers are repeated thousands of times, and local press releases are nearly identical in Des Moines, Iowa, and Manchester, New Hampshire. Off-the-cuff and off-the-record remarks are diagrammed down to the comma, and a candidate's 5-year-old daughter will be carefully coached on her public opinion on a sponge named Bob. Everything about the message starts with a slogan. Now, we could have gone with Nixon, for the future, or Gore, prosperity and progress, or even McKinley, a full dinner pail. Instead, we picked an official slogan that promised youth, freedom, and hope. Hell if I know what it was. I do remember the unwritten one, don't fuck up, or donkey for short. Created by a couple of volunteers at 3 o'clock in the morning after a bad day on the road, it involved a ritual. Whenever we appeared in public, someone would whisper, donkey, and all of us, without exception, would whisper it back. Even today, I find myself muttering donkey before giving a speech. Don Gibbs, the man behind the message and the slogan, was perhaps the classiest man I have ever had the honor of being associated with. He had a resume a mile long with multiple graduate degrees and simultaneous tenure at 2 prestigious Ivy League schools. Government policy gurus the world over sought out his opinion, and I felt blessed to have him on staff. Personally, he was our moral compass. When we got the questions about feeding children versus arming unfriendly Middle Eastern militias, Don found the blended needed of facts and emotion to get a slice of the 24-hour news cycle in a way that didn't make us hate ourselves too. These weren't just words in it to him. He believed. He believed hard. And the young ones always do. At 33 years old, Don was a boy wonder and the youngest member of the senior staff. Don was the guy at the beginning of The Godfather who professes his love for America. Like me, he lost his father in a military incident at a young age, and instead of becoming bitter, he got smart. He figured out that the best way for sons to stop losing dads, and vice versa, in a war was to write national policy in a way that saved America's finest from dying overseas. He was 13 years old when he drew up the plan for his life, and he followed it like the gospel. It didn't hurt that his grandfather was a senior U.S. senator from a state with a bunch of electoral votes, but don't buy into that. Don Gibbs was his own man, and someone I was proud to call a friend, though I wasn't blind to his major weakness. A serious candidate needs lots and lots of money. Realistically, there's not enough money in the world to reach every voter and convince them that the message is the best thing for them since new batteries in their favorite vibrator. You have to enlist outside help in the worst way. Now, fortunately, you can get that help at no cost, but also in the worst way. Yes, I'm talking about the press corps. The unwashed masses, the opinionated jerks, the fourth branch of the government, and the lifeblood of every American campaign since John Adams decided he wanted to be the second POTUS. Handle them right, and many of your headaches vanish before they appear in print. Treat them like dirt, and a piece of spinach stuck in your ear. Treat them like dirt, and a piece of spinach stuck in your teeth will find its way onto a million websites. Don's problem was he hated the press and treated them with contempt. He was in love with the melodic sound of the message and forgot that his music had to be played by bad musicians. This was combined with the thinnest skin in human existence, something not uncommon in academia types. I probably spent more time than necessary talking Don down from anger attacks brought on by the minions' purposeful misinterpretation of the campaign's position papers. The two of us finally had it out in South Carolina. That bastard, Don hissed. I looked up from the draft speech on my table in the bus and sighed as loud as possible. I was not in the mood for another squabble. I hadn't slept well the night before. The heat on the bus was broken, and Columbia in January is no picnic. Plus, I'd heard fried chicken was going to be on the menu at the next stop. Governor, he said, Hoskins from the Post wrote that you supported reopening Yucca Mountain to nuclear waste. Now, we both knew that I said or meant no such thing, but I tripped over my tongue a couple of days ago. Investigate alternate storage methodologies came out of my mouth as check all possibilities, including Yucca Mountain. 5-syllable words are bad things, believe me. Is he in the bus behind us? I asked, pointing over my thumb over my shoulder. Yes, sir. I turned to the senior agent in my Secret Service detail. Angus, when you stop, could you drag Jack Hoskins off the press button and beat the shit out of him? Angus stared at me for a long time without replying before returning to his book. He never said anything to me outside the line of duty, but I didn't care. He was at my elbow whenever I worked a rope line, and he always had a hand on my belt, ready to jerk me away from harm. In the unlikely event I had another kid, I'd name him or her after Angus. Governor, Don transferred his anger from Jack Hoskins to me, which was exactly what I planned. I held up my hands, palm out. I know, never joke about pummeling a reporter. Listen, Don, this is on me. You know that. Anyway, it's time we talked. Are you going to be like this for the rest of the trip? Like what? His voice was quiet, but every muscle was taut. His body language screamed he was prepared to physically attack me. Angus put down his book. The press does this to you because they know you get riled up. It's not personal. They're bored, and this is all a game to them. They push your button and watch you dance. Hell, when I get bored, I sometimes think of doing the same thing. He fumed and relaxed a little. Don had a healthy amount of introspection, and he listened to me. Even so, Angus didn't pick up his book until I turned my palms inward and drew them towards my chest. Don, I need you to stay, but I can't be thinking about you latching onto the throat of some stringer from Madison, Wisconsin. You need to focus on the message and keep on writing some of the best political papers I've read. That's saying something. I've been reading political pieces on a daily basis for over a decade at that point. Sir, it just seems pointless with them assholes cherry-picking words and phrases. I interrupted him. And like Ground says, if you let an asshole ruin your day, then every day of your life will be ruined. Don and Gran met at my wedding and took to each other like puppies in a litter. From the outside, they looked like polar opposites, with his professional aura and her down-home intolerance to bullshit. But I think they were soulmates in another life. He was the only person who loved Gran more than me and would have happily married her despite the gaps in years. Therefore, I rarely invoked her in his presence. Doing so had the usual effect. Don took a deep breath and went back to his laptop. Angus picked up his book, and I returned to redlining my speech. In reality, the blow-up in South Carolina was much worse than I've written here. Angus was more involved than he wanted to be, and Don took an unwanted 2-week sabbatical from the campaign to get his head screwed on straight. When he got back, he was better, and the black eye had faded. Jack Hoskins' black eye took longer to heal, but his professionalism meant that he never spoke or wrote about what happened in Florida. That's one thing Don and Jack had in common. They understood the man makes the job, not the other way around. I miss them both bad. I'm going to go ahead and pause there, and I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and I'm going to talk about things that I have done right and things that I haven't done right with this book, and mostly I'm going to focus on things that I haven't done right. First of all, that interlude there about the communications director was an interlude. And it took me a while to realize that interludes like that takes the reader out of the flow of the story is a mistake. And I admit that right up front. And I have to say, also, Cece was telling me that at the time I wrote the book, and every time since. And I finally learned my lesson. And the current work in progress I'm doing right now does still have interludes, but they're plot-driven and they're point to the plot. It also had some extra interludes, which I took out. They're gone. And it took out 1,000 words from the manuscript, which is fine, because if it doesn't belong in the manuscript, if it doesn't move the action along, then interludes don't belong. But I did leave 1 or 2 because it is important in the current manuscript. In this particular book, I see it now. What I don't see then is the interludes just sort of make things slow down, takes the readers out of the flow, and the flow is important for keeping that suspension of disbelief, because the reader knows that this is a book of fiction, but they still want to be persuaded that there's some reality going on here. So interludes sort of make that mistake. And another thing that I didn't do, and I should do, and I have a problem with doing, is I should read these books aloud, because I can tell even now, and you're picking up on that, I don't know how, as I go over these words, sometimes I get into these strings where even as I wrote in there, 5-syllable words, I have too many of those in a sentence, and it just, again, complicates things unnecessarily. So just a heads up for y'all, maybe read a sentence out loud. Try not to be over cute. Try not to sound over educated. Someone once said, no writer will go poor if they write for people who move their lips. I don't. I'm troubled by that in a couple of ways, but they're not wrong either. I mean, look at all the books that are out there, especially some folks that are very famous for writing books at a certain reading level. So, anything else that I can think about that I wouldn't do here or would do here? Not off the top of my head. One thing this book doesn't have, and again, it's excusable since it is my first book, it doesn't have clearly delineated chapters. And it's kind of driving me crazy as I read this. But that's something I don't repeat in future books. At least I picked up on that when I finished this book. In the future, my books and the books that you see on my writer's page on Amazon, they all have chapters, and they all do have breakpoints. And maybe in the future, I will read those books too after we get through this one. That's all for now that I can think about. I hope that you're reading along. I hope you're listening along. As always, the link to the book is down there. The link to the website is down there. The ability to leave comments is down there, etc., etc., etc. Please leave comments. Please provide feedback. And again, if you want to read ahead, buy the book. And you won't be if you're interested so far from what you heard, it'll be money well spent. For now, this is J.T. Hume from the worldwide headquarters of the CC and J.T. Hume Amateur Hour, the world-famous podcast where production values go to die. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Click.